Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and today I want to talk to you guys a little bit about when we need to take a step back in our training so that we can take 2 steps forward. Now, in a perfect world, and none of us are in a perfect world, even when you have a good coach, even when you know what you're doing, we don't live in a perfect world in our training. Things will go wrong, progression will get messed up, life will get in the way. It does happen, but I'm talking about how do we get around certain plateaus or minor issues or things that we know that we can change so that we can progress, and sometimes that requires us to take a step back. And I'm going to use the footage in this video of me kind of plateauing with my 275 on my close grip bench, and then my footage from today of me reducing the weight a bit. In fact, I've got 30 less pounds on the bar, doing a 5x5 with a totally different grip. And this is a perfect example of this, and you guys can kind of see the difference in the footage. I started bench pressing again a couple months ago after taking a year and a half off, and yeah, I know my bench isn't amazing. Doing work sets with 275 for triples, that's not amazing. You guys have seen me considerably stronger than that, so we all know that's below my my potential. And I'll get to and surpass where I was before on camera. I have no doubt in my mind my bench will be stronger 2 years from now than it was when peaking for my last powerlifting meets. I have no doubt about that in my mind. But that also requires us to sometimes step back and take a step back. And it doesn't matter what your training goals are with this, because this is a general concept that you have to understand. And knowing this, it doesn't matter what your goals are, because I would tell guys who are chasing hypertrophy, if you don't get stronger, you're still not going to get bigger. It's irrelevant what you do. You can chase the pump all day long. Your performance is what stimulates muscle growth, barring genetic freaks or people on insane amounts of drugs. But even then, getting stronger will still give them faster goals, faster results. So the point is, an example right here, I progressed too fast on my bench. I came back to benching and I hit 265 with my closed grip for 10 sets of 3, and I'm like, I'm going to do a 10-pound jump. Well, that's a perfect example of kind of putting the cart before the horse, in that I wanted to get to that so fast that I didn't take the time to do it right. I just stuck with purely closed grip, relearning the exercise, didn't really look at levers, leverages, anything like that. Just brute closed grip strength, even with a less than ideal grip setup. Brute strength, get it back. What happened? After 265, I jumped 10 pounds and I started stalling. I not only started stalling, I had a slight regression, because I went from being able to do 8 sets with 275, but they weren't with good pauses. You know, so a lot of that was on the edge of touch and go, wasn't it? Yeah, a lot of touch and go, or close to. It would depend on who you ask. I mean, the definition will vary. But I didn't have mastery of the weight. Yes, it's fast. Yes, it's explosive to some extent, but it's not mastery of the weight. And accordingly, I stalled, had a slight regression, and I was stuck there. You guys watched me for 3 weeks handle that. Then I even took a mild step back to 265, and even that I couldn't finish my 10 sets after doing a couple sets with 275. I couldn't get to 10 sets, which is the goal, even when I reduced weight slightly. So that's a point to where we step back and say, okay, let's assess this. I'm at a point right now, I'm getting older. The closed grip I'm using is a little hard on my forearms. It's not ideal levers. And at the end of the day, does it matter if I switch to slightly better levers? If the slightly better levers equals more weight and I'm still doing a nice long full range of motion exercise, I'm going to gain the same muscle and strength. It's not like I'm going ultra wide, so I'm like, okay, let me step back, get my ideal grip width to where I have the best levers from the bottom in terms of my forearms, and I have really long arms. That's still an insane range of motion. So step back, not only readjust the grip, but here's what happens when you readjust grip to the point of where you're almost doing a different exercise, or your foot stance, because a squat, a deadlift, up any sort of press, your hand position absolutely can make the motor pattern different. If you want to do that because you know that in the long term you might be better off making that adjustment or adjusting that technique, you can't pound away with the exact weights you were plateauing with. Can you? Doesn't work. You have to step back. Step back to a manageable weight and rebuild from there. And in my case, it's going to be multifold. I know that 10-pound jump in my bench work sets was too much. What happens on any, I don't care whether you're a novice, an intermediate, or an advanced, when you do too big of a weight jump on a compound lift and you're not blasting enough drugs to push through it, what happens? You plateau, you stall, and you stop progressing completely. Because the thing is, it's like I've said before, even intermediate and advanced lifters can make linear progression. It's just going to be very, very slow. And if they're careful, they won't regress. They'll just make very slow linear progression. They won't regress. If you jump too far, too fast, you can start to regress. And when you get there, you get stuck. And once you are stuck, you have to find a way to get yourself unstuck. Or you need to make a major technique adjustment. Like me, I'm revamping the way I do overhead pressing a little bit too. I'm actually changing all of my pressing. And I wasn't happy with last week's overhead pressing, by the way. A lot of people are being critical. They don't understand that was me adjusting and experimenting. I could have just not put that on camera. I was filming it anyways because I needed it for my own learning tools to adjust my own bar path and technique and grip widths. And yeah, it wasn't perfect. It was trying to find the ideal. And without looking at what you're doing and adjusting a couple different directions, you're not going to find your ideal leverage and form and bar paths. You have to play with it a little bit. You've got to find it. You've got to find those movement patterns. So in that case, that's what I'm doing. But the same thing on the bench. Stalled, realized I have to step back. I should probably at this time, because I have to take a step backwards. Normally when I would do something like adjust the grip width significantly, several inches on each side, you're also going to have a slight change in the movement pattern. You're going to have to relearn that also. So in this case, I chose to kill two birds with one stone. Address too large of a weight jump with the change in grip and just only have to deal with one big reset, so that I don't have to deal with a second one in a couple months down the road when I decide, well, I'm going to bring my grip out of here. Rather than deal with that, deal with it now. And that's the beauty of sometimes assessing when you know you have a couple different things you're probably going to need to change in the future. When you do a big reset, that's a good time to address all of those things at once. Because that way you only deal with one reset, one big relearning curve, and you go back to moving forward. But this is how we oftentimes do this. One step back so that I can make two steps forward when you're not making any steps at all. And ultimately, it's always a slow process. And anyone who's been lifting a while, who's out of that noob phase, realizes that all your progress is a slow process. Building muscle is a slow process. Building strength is a slow process. And it requires a lot of consistency. It requires some stepping back and analyzing what you're doing. It requires you to be honest with yourself with where you are and where you're trying to go. You have to be honest with yourself about that. You can't have delusions about what it is that you're doing, because if you do, that's when you're going to stall. That's when you're going to get injured. You got to be honest. And you know what? This same concept is applied to any novice program. Doesn't matter whether it's my novice program or starting strength or strong lifts or any of these proven novice programs. All of them, when you stall for the novice, what do we have the novice do? Reduce the weight on the bar, reset, take a step back, and then take two steps forward. With novices, obviously, the easiest way to avoid that is slower weight increases. Weight resets are only necessary even for the novice when you're pushing hard progression. If you were to ramp up the weight a little slower, novices can sometimes never stall. They'll never stall. It's just that ultimately you lose a little bit of gains if you don't have them add weight every single time that they possibly can to the bar, which can be as often as 2 or 3 times a week on some lifts. And that's why these sort of programs are successful. You have them throw up 5 pounds on the bar every time they squat 3 times a week. That's 15 pounds a week. You will sometimes see a novice doing this add 50 to 100 pounds to the bar in 5-pound increments before they stall. You'll see them sometimes go 2 months. So 8 weeks, 15 pounds a week. You know, you do the math. Over 100 pounds is not uncommon before they stall. But even then, when they do stall, you have to take a step back. We have to take a step back and address this from the point of view of our ego and say, okay, if I want to move forward, I have to step back, relearn, readapt, recover, and then I will be able to progress again. And it's a normal part of the training process. All right, guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time.